Hey everyone, it's Heather, and I am a nurse practitioner who specializes in hormone management specifically for the perimenopausal and menopausal woman. Although I do some testosterone therapy for men, and I'm going to be doing a multi-part series here on social media to talk about hormones and the Dutch test because I believe in the Dutch test and I want you to know about it. So, first thing we're going to talk about today is stress. What is stress? Stress presents an added challenge to menopause because it comes in many forms and it can impact the body in very conflicting ways depending on a woman's genetics and history and response to stress. So stress can be physical. It could be stress like exercise, your work, your playing, your fun. It could be emotional, reaction to your high workload, your perceived negative interactions with people. Stress can be short term. It could be like a minor car accident. It could be an amusement park ride. Stress can be long term when there's major life changes like moving, death of a family, loss of a job, divorce, marriage, anything. Stress is perceived differently from person to person, but the core component of stress is a hormone called cortisol. Now let's talk about cortisol. It's one of the several hormones that are produced by your adrenal glands. Adrenal glands are those cute little things that sit on top of the kidneys. They're a powerful cell signaling hormone that increases your blood sugar, improves your insulin sensitivity, it reduces growth hormone, it activates your thyroid hormones, specifically T3. We're suppressing immune reactivity and inflammation. My bird wants to join in. We're mobilizing fats and proteins to use as energy and the building blocks. So in short, cortisol is in charge of a lot of body functions. And you'll see lots of people post videos about excess cortisol, cortisol deficit, adrenal fatigue, but you really have to get down to the root to know where your levels are at different times of the day and what part of the cycle you are in to really understand how cortisol is affecting your life. So the body uses cortisol as a key component of your awakening response, bringing your body into metabolic activation, getting your focus after waking up. So this powerful kickstart has to be short-lived to promote optimal wellness. And sometimes people, when their cortisol should be hitting its deficit and then rising in the morning, theirs is rising before they wake up, almost like they're in a fight or flight response, and then they're waking up tired. And then they're also exhausting themselves by 2 or 3 p.m. So cortisol needs to stay at modest levels unless stress-specific stressors occur that allow proper immune and metabolic function to happen during a stressful period. And this is controlled by this thing called this HPA axis. And that's where the Dutch test comes in because it actually analyzes that hypothalamic pituitary adrenal axis. And this axis begins in the two structures in the brain. It's the hypothalamus and the pituitary. Remember those things you learned about in high school anatomy? In the form of nerve impulses, such as like pain or fear, stress triggers the release of catecholamines and a thing called ACTH, which is adrenocorticotropic hormone. So this ACTH binds with receptors in your adrenal cortex in places that cause for cortisol release and for DHEA release. So good stress, like exercise, utilizes cortisol to promote increased energy availability and focus, which is why we like you to exercise in the morning. Good stress is short-lived. Cortisol levels will decline after the stressor is removed. You will have good immune function and you will have a rested brain. Bad stress, heavy workload, heavy mental load, personal events, work events, life events, that cortisol release continues indefinitely, perhaps for days, weeks, or months, right? So we're constantly in that fight or flight. And cortisol increases, we're supposed to be optimizing our focus on a problem, but with bad stress, the problem is persistent beyond what's considered healthy. So cortisol subsequently chronically raises your baseline blood sugar and suppresses your immune function. So we should have a daily cortisol pattern that looks similar to this. So it kind of looks like that, where we have a trough, then a peak, and then another trough, starting in the morning when you wake up to when you go to sleep. So we'll have people with disruptions in this cortisol where they're not starting out with that low and going to a peak. And stress impacts cortisol through your circadian rhythm disruption. And the circadian rhythm of cortisol includes its peak in the morning, followed by a decline, with only tiny amounts of cortisol to be made at night when you should be sleeping. Now you can see why your night shift workers are at higher risk for cardiovascular diseases, diabetes, and all these other things that go with messing up their natural circadian rhythm. So this circadian rhythm disruption, it leads to many, many issues, right? We got poor cortisol in the morning, high cortisol at night. Output is normal sometimes, but the curve is flattened. And with a flattened curve, even though your daily cortisol could be normal, you're lacking that sharp rise of awakening, and you're not getting the brain power that you need to function in the morning. And then when we don't have that break of cortisol at night when we should be sleeping and repairing, that's when we're getting our weight gain, we're getting our metabolic diseases, we're getting our poor immune function, we're getting depression, we're getting a host of other health issues that could simply be fixed if we got to the root cause of why there is cortisol dysfunction. And that is why that has become the focus of my practice in balancing hormones. And am I the best? No, I'm still learning too. How'd I get into this? Great question. I'm going to do a video on what made me change over from doing primary care into focusing mainly on hormones.